One of my horses got accused of a federal crime by the HOA president. Yes, seriously. She showed up with a clipboard, her phone in hand, and acted like she was about to break a huge news story. I was just letting my horses enjoy a swim in my own pond, like they do every morning, when this woman started shouting about contamination, community safety, and federal property. Within minutes, she was live streaming everything, like she was exposing some deep crime scene. She called the cops on me, said I was endangering public health and abusing animals. All because my horses, who happened to include a couple temporarily on loan from the Border Patrol, were having a peaceful splash. What started as a quiet morning on my ranch turned into a full-on circus, complete with fake inspectors, angry neighbors, and enough drama to fill a season of bad reality TV. And believe me, this was just the beginning. You're not going to believe how far this woman went, or how badly it backfired. That morning started like any other. The sun was just coming up, casting a soft light across the pasture. I slipped on my old boots, the ones with the worn heel, and walked out to the barn to greet the horses. Thunder, my black stallion, was already wide awake, snorting and pawing at the ground like he knew it was swim time. Whisper, calm as ever, stood beside him, tail swishing slowly. Storm, the youngest of the three, trotted in circles, too excited to stand still. Then there were the two chestnuts, Ranger and Scout, both on loan from Border Patrol. They were here for a few weeks while their own stables got repairs, and they fit right in. Every morning, I led all 5 of them down to the pond at the edge of the property. It's been part of my family's land for 3 generations, and letting the horses swim there is something I've done for years. The water was clear, the grass was still wet with dew, and the fence lines I fixed myself stood strong around us. It was quiet, peaceful, and honestly one of the best parts of my day. At least it was, until she showed up. Out of nowhere, here she came. Sharon Buckley, the self-declared queen of the HOA. She stormed across the property line like she was leading a SWAT team, phone already recording, clipboard in hand like it was some kind of weapon. She was wearing this ridiculous vest full of random patches that looked like they came from a kid's costume set. Her clothes were wrinkled, hair all over the place, but she walked like she owned everything the sun touched. Without even saying hello, she shouted, "Stop right there!" and pointed at my horses like she'd just spotted fugitives on the run. I didn't say a word at first, just stood there trying to figure out if this was real life. Then she started going off about community contamination and how I was violating neighborhood water safety. Said it in that tone that made clean community sound like something personal, like the pond wasn't just dirty. It was a threat to her entire way of life. I tried to tell her the pond was on private land and had been part of my family's ranch for decades, but she wasn't hearing it. She just kept filming and shouting like she was the hero in some made-up crime show. Before I could even get another word in, Sharon was already on the phone, pacing in circles and yelling into it like she was calling in a major emergency. "Yes, I'd like to report animal abuse and a public health risk," she shouted, waving her arms like she was guiding a helicopter in. I stood there with my horses still splashing behind me, completely confused. 20 minutes later, sure enough, a patrol car rolled up. Out stepped Tom Harrove, local cop, old friend, and someone who's eaten more than a few burgers at my backyard cookouts. He looked at me, then at Sharon, then at my horses, and you could tell by the look on his face he already knew this was nonsense. Still, he walked over and asked what was going on, because duty's duty. I walked him over to the fence line, showed him the survey markers, the deed, the pond, all clearly on my land. Tom nodded, turned back to Sharon and said, "There's no violation here, ma'am." You'd think that would have been the end of it, but no. While we were talking, I caught Sharon walking away from my mailbox, tucking something into her giant purse like it was no big deal. The next morning, everything changed. Sharon must have stayed up all night working, because by sunrise, every house in the neighborhood had one of her fake notices taped to the door. Big red letters screamed, "Emergency health hazard," like I was running a toxic waste dump instead of a small ranch. The papers were full of lies, claims that I was keeping animals illegally, contaminating shared water, and running an unlicensed commercial stable. She even made it sound like my horses were some kind of bio-threat. People started acting weird right away. Neighbors I'd waved to for years suddenly crossed the street when they saw me. One guy even pulled his kid away like I had the plague. I overheard someone whisper, "That's the guy with the illegal horses." It stung. I'd lived here my whole life, fixed fences for half these folks. And now, thanks to Sharon's made-up nonsense, I was being treated like a criminal. The only one who didn't buy into it was Emily, my neighbor and good friend. She showed up at my gate with her copy of the fake notice, shaking her head. "This woman's out of control," she said. "She fined me last month for planting wildflowers." Emily didn't just believe me. She was ready to help. A couple days later, Sharon showed up again, this time dragging along some guy she claimed was an official HOA environmental inspector. The man looked like he'd just rolled out of bed. Wrinkled shirt, no badge, clipboard with no actual papers, and a face that said he wasn't sure why he was even there. They immediately started filming everything with her phone, walking around like they were shooting some serious investigation. She kept pointing dramatically at random spots near the pond and talking into the camera like she was hosting a documentary. It was like watching a low-budget true crime show. The guy pretended to take notes, scooped pond water into an old plastic cup, and nodded like he knew what he was doing. At one point, I swear I heard her whisper, "Make sure you mention the contamination, like water doesn't carry sound." I watched from my porch, arms crossed, saying nothing, just taking it all in. What got me the most was how carefully she framed her shots. She made sure to avoid showing any fence lines or markers, so it looked like the pond was part of some shared space. It was clear now. This wasn't just some power trip. She was trying to build a story, a lie, and she wanted as many people to believe it as possible. After watching her little show by the pond, I knew she wasn't done. And sure enough, that same week, my motion sensor lights started going off in the middle of the night. I wasn't about to confront her in the dark, so I pulled out the drone I usually use for checking fence lines. Quiet, fast, and with a camera that caught everything. That night, just past 2 a.m., I saw her creeping around my property in all black, flashlight in one hand and some kind of sample bags in the other. She climbed over my fence like it was nothing. So much for her rant about trespassing. Then she started scooping water, taking photos, and, this was the wild part, dumped something into the pond. I zoomed in. Looked like food coloring. She was trying to make the water look polluted, and she was recording it like she'd discovered the damage. She wanted a show. I gave her high-definition drama with surround sound. I took the best clips, edited the footage, and wrote a short report using her favorite kind of wording, documented property violations, evidence tampering, and all that. Then I sent the whole thing to the HOA board with a simple subject line. For your review. Let's just say the replies came in fast. Sharon, riding high on her fake victory, decided to throw an HOA meeting that looked more like a full-on event. She invited half the neighborhood, set up folding chairs, even brought in a microphone and cameras like she was hosting a press conference. Her plan was clear. Get me to stand up and publicly confess to all the crimes she'd made up. I played along. Sat there quietly while she read off a long list of false charges, flipping through her clipboard like it was full of real legal documents. Then, when it was finally my turn to speak, I stood up, nodded, and said, "You're right. People should see everything. So here it is." I reached over and hit play on my laptop, which was hooked up to the projector. The room went dead silent. On screen, there she was, sneaking around my pond at night, dumping dye into the water, coaching her fake inspector to lie, and carefully avoiding every fence marker that proved the land was mine. And just when I thought it couldn't get better, the back door opened, and in walked Dana Monroe from the Border Patrol. She held up her badge and said clearly, "Those horses are here under legal agreement with us. Everything's documented." That's when Sharon dropped her clipboard. Like, actually dropped it. Papers scattered across the floor. A few neighbors gasped. One woman straight up whispered, "Oh my God." And for the first time since all this started, Sharon didn't have a single thing to say. After that meeting, everything started falling apart for Sharon. Fast. The HOA board met the next day and voted to remove her from her position. No more fake rules, no more made-up fines, no more clipboard power trips. People who'd been silent for months suddenly started speaking up. One neighbor told me she got fined for planting sunflowers too close to the sidewalk. Another said Sharon made her move a garden gnome because it clashed with community colors. It was like everyone had been holding their breath, waiting for someone to finally stand up to her. And now that the truth was out, they weren't afraid anymore. A few neighbors even came by to say sorry for believing the lies. One dropped off fresh cookies. Another offered to help repaint my barn. As for the mailbox, that wasn't forgotten. Tom, the local officer, launched a full investigation. Turns out stealing mail isn't just creepy, it's a federal crime. The same woman who tried to ruin my name was now being looked at by the same system she thought she could twist. The best part? My horses still swam in the same pond, like none of it had ever happened. A few months later, I threw the biggest barbecue my ranch had ever seen. The whole neighborhood showed up. Kids running around, people laughing, horses splashing in the pond like nothing had ever happened. Thunder, Whisper, Storm, Ranger, and Scout were all out there, kicking up water under the setting sun. Sharon? She wasn't invited. She'd been found guilty of mail theft, evidence tampering, and filing false reports. Got slapped with fines, probation, and a permanent ban from ever serving on an HOA board again. Emily, my neighbor, and now the new HOA president, brought me a gift that stole the show. A handmade wooden sign that read, "Where horses swim free and Karens get served justice." I hung it right on the fence by the pond. After everything, I decided to write a simple guide to help other people dealing with HOA nightmares. Nothing fancy, just real advice from someone who lived it. The guide spread fast, more than I expected. That evening, after the food was gone and the fire died down, I sat by the pond, watching the water ripple under the stars. It was quiet, finally. Peaceful. And as I looked out over the land my family had built, one thought stuck in my mind. Truth always floats, no matter how much mud you stir.